Hello friends, this is Anton and you're on the Blackroom channel. In this video, I'll show you our new cinema hall project in Alexandrovka. Come on in. So how do you like the design, friends? We started working on this beautiful hall last year, began designing it in June, and completed it roughly a year later. In this space, you are now seeing the original room, and here we are with you. In the south of the Moscow region lies the village of Alexandrovka. Here, in a house built in the 90s. Since then, there has been a gym. The room itself is quite spacious, 44 square meters, 8 meters in length, 5.3 meters in width, but the ceiling height, of course, is lacking. Only 2 meters 38 centimeters. However, in this case, it did not become a limiting factor, and we implemented a full-fledged cinema hall with a Dolby Atmos system here. And that's because the client had no need to construct. There are several rows of seats here. This cinema hall is intimate. It's for the family, for the client, for his spouse, and occasional guests. During the project development process, we of course also designed the interior of this room. The fill-in cinema hall was taken as a basis. As you can see here, even the color of the acoustic fabric is exactly the same. The client is passionate about cinema. He constantly watches movies and concerts. For him, the most important thing was, of course, performance, the quality of sound and image. And then, for it to look pleasant and not interfere with enjoying a high-quality projection image and great spatial sound with Dolby Atmos. That's why such dark tones were chosen for the finish. The room is not black, but it is quite dark. All the materials and colors of the finish are, in one way or another, shades of black, shades of gray. Therefore, this finish minimally affects the projection image. But we won't talk much about the design because it's a thankless task. Yes, you have seen for yourself how this hall actually looks at the beginning of the video. Therefore, I suggest we move on to the engineering aspect of this project because there is truly something to show and tell here. So, the room itself, how it was created, considering that the ceiling height is low and the client usually watches movies with his spouse and there is no one else to disturb, soundproofing, its critical implementation was not essential. Thus, we decided not to take away an additional 10 centimeters from the ceiling and to use it entirely for the finishing and of course the acoustic design, which is located behind these fabric panels. Accordingly, there is no soundproofing on the ceiling. For all the other walls, everything is done classically according to the approaches and principles by which we create the acoustic shell and soundproofing in every typical Blackroom cinema hall. And of course, we also had to fit into the budget and not spend extra money of the client, considering the fact that soundproofing is kind of unnecessary. But you surely all know from our previous videos that the acoustic shell itself not only performs a soundproofing function, it also has a beneficial effect on the low-frequency component of the room's acoustics. It removes unnecessary fluctuations in standing waves, excess bass, and makes the sound more even at bass frequencies. Therefore, the acoustic shell was made on the walls, but using certain materials on which we could safely save money. For example, instead of the 3-layer sandwich panels that we usually use, first covering all the walls, we used regular mineral wool. But the covering of all the walls was done in the classic way. This includes gypsum board, gypsum fiber board, plus accordingly a membrane. But there is a block located between the 2 layers of covering. And of course we used a standard soundproof vibro isolated profile. The only other thing we did structurally with the ceiling, besides, we created a beautiful finish and acoustic design here. This is the box around the perimeter in which, as a rule, our ventilation system always runs. And here it also found its place. It's a full-fledged air supply, full-fledged exhaust, and, of course, an air conditioning system. This room originally had 3 windows. We are on the basement floor, and there were 3 windows here. 2 along this wall, and 1 window was right there, where the projector is now shining on you. During the project development process, we, of course, considered the option of getting rid of all these windows because they are not actually needed in a cinema hall. But considering these side windows here, they did not interfere with placing either the speakers or the acoustic panels. In agreement with the client, we kept them and applied blackout. The client was also concerned that if we suddenly left these windows and did nothing else, then the soundproofing of the windows would be insufficient and the sound would escape outside and disturb the neighbors. In fact, this did not happen. We simply conducted an experiment and showed him how well a regular good double-glazed window actually holds sound. Thus, we simply added soundproofing to these double-glazed windows and the issue was resolved. We decorated them in a simple way. This is of course a black room, but it is integrated directly into the finished interior. A special insert was made for it with a special wooden cladding for this window. Well, now you can actually see everything in the additional footage. And the blackouts, of course, are controlled with an iPad and open with the press of a single button because there are servo motors. Everything is accounted for. Another issue was the radiators. There were a lot of them here. They were in quite a significant number. They were also all encased in drywall with a special box around the perimeter of the room. But we elegantly solved this issue so as not to ruin our acoustic shell layer and not to invent anything for embedding these radiators into the walls or any new ones. We simply took and embedded two small radiators directly into the floor. Passive, without any fans, but considering that there is an acoustic shell here, this room is almost always warm and it needs cooling just like in any home theater we build. Therefore, the two radiators in the floor solve the problem of providing heat. And concluding the story of the soundproofing of the acoustic shell, we need to mention the door. Certainly there is an acoustic door at the entrance, but not the most robust standard type that we usually install in theaters, but a so-called lightweight one. It's smaller, 16 millimeters thick, and has a single ceiling contour, but it fulfills the necessary task of blocking external noise, which might come from the garage or neighboring rooms. And by the way, there's a boiler nearby at 100%, and nothing more was required in this project. Of course, all panels were placed according to the acoustic design and acoustic calculations in their strategically correct positions, which they should occupy in principle in every cinema hall, but their quantity was certainly calculated. And the acoustic design here is influenced not only by the panels themselves, which are not visible at the moment, but also, of course, by the carpet, which adds comfort to the use of the cinema hall and the furniture. But I won't tell you much about the furniture today because there are temporary sofa poofs here now, which the client simply preferred. For now, just come down from your attic and use it like this for the first time. I'll let you in on a little secret. He is waiting for a new model of chairs, which is currently coming out of production. They will be placed in our demo hall accordingly. And the client will come and fully evaluate them. This is the type of furniture he wants here. That is something more similar to sofas rather than classic recliner chairs. Well, he just doesn't like them. What can you do? And to conclude the story about the room, I would just like to list the finishing materials that will be changed here. The walls and ceiling, as you can see, are mostly covered with fabric panels or fabric grills as we call them, wrapped in acoustically transparent fabric. On the ceiling, they are almost square. On the walls, they are rectangular, and they allow us to achieve the most accurate room style. Speakers here. They are wrapped around either this ceiling box, which simply painted, yes, it is also made of 3 layers. It is purely acoustically inert with an effective sound absorber, of course, and painted in dark gray. And it encircles the entire hall with several bands of natural veneered panels. This is oak veneer, tinted in a matte black color. Well, perhaps that's enough about the finish. Let's now talk about the most interesting part. What usually interests you the most is the equipment, the audio and video system that has found its place in this home theater. So, opposite me is located a screen research screen with a 2.41 format, 160 inches wide. Yes, friends, that's a little over 4 meters, 4 meters and 6 centimeters to be precise. This is exactly the same width as the screen in our showroom. And since in this cinema room, the main focus is on the image and sound, the screen. It practically covers the entire wall. Considering that the ceiling is not very high, and now you should actually see how low it is, I can basically jump and reach it with my head. And here, on the screen wall, we have dedicated almost all the space to the screen. Therefore, it's 160 inches wide, practically from wall to wall. There are about 25 to 30 meters left on each edge to prevent unnecessary light spill on the side walls. The screen is on a velvet frame. As usual, it's stationary, of course, acoustically transparent, from the brand Screen Research with ClearPix Ultimate fabric, gain coefficient 0.75. This is the most modern fabric from Screen Research. the most modern acoustically transparent fabric. And behind this screen, we have the main channels of our Dolby Atmos spatial sound audio system. The system here is 9.1.4 and 4 subwoofers. So, behind the screen, we have 3 fronts. These are Procello Audio P8, a classic model that we use in cinemas of this level, and it has never let us down. For the subwoofer component, we use 4 subwoofers from the same manufacturer, Procello Audio, model P15A. This is a subwoofer in a concealed box with a single 15-inch driver, an integrated Class D amplifier. The left and right channels are angled towards the listening area to ensure the most accurate coverage, dispersion, and speaker exposure for the entire listening zone. Even though the listening area here is small, we conducted all the necessary experiments and the speakers have been angled in the best possible way. And the speakers are optimally placed in the baffle wall, in the screen wall, which was specifically designed and built so that all the speakers and subwoofers become part of it. And of course, it is lined with sound-absorbing material of the necessary thickness, about 7 centimeters. We have sound absorption, so that the screen wall does not reflect any sound, either from the surrounds or ceiling channels. The remaining satellites, a spatial sound system organized based on a single model. This is the Procello Audio P6V, which is the vertical version of the P6 model. They are also placed on the wides. Now you can see how the wide is organized. It is in a special soundproof box angled towards the listening area. Surround channels and side surrounds are also placed on the walls. The rear surrounds are positioned in their niches. And on the back wall, there are 2 more subwoofers similar to the front ones, which are accordingly tuned and play in unison to provide the most even and rich bass in the listening area. And on the ceiling, there are 4 Dolby Atmos channels of the same Procello Audio model P6P. Now about the electronics. Unfortunately, there was no adjacent room where we could confidently place the equipment rack, as we usually do in our standard project. Therefore, it was decided to organize equipment racks here, and there are actually 2 of them in the rear part of the room. Since we have only 1 row, we don't need any bar counter or podium. We simply took and allocated space in the back wall and recessed it there. A special beautiful cabinet that looks like a cabinet from the outside, and placed 2 small equipment racks there. Let me show you how it all looks. So, the most interesting part, friends. So look, 2 racks with equipment. They are small, not like usual, not 2 meters high. In general, of course, this niche, when we close it, it heats up. And of course, it is made ventilated. The ventilation and air conditioning system, which always operates when watching movies here, also works for the intake of cold air and its exhaust right here on top. In this area where the equipment racks are located so it never overheats, what do we have here? The heart of the system is the Trinnov processor, altitude 16, provides power supply to each acoustic system, reliable American amplifiers from the company. These are based on linear power supplies, but with digital Class D modules from Hypex, and Core. Those are our favorite modules that we use in every project one way or another. Even the company Alcons Audio also uses them in their amplifiers. These modules, 2 amplifiers, fully support the entire audio system. 13 channels that are in this hall. Slightly lower in the left rack is the power supply equipment. Yes, here we went a bit further than we do in a standard, a relatively inexpensive home cinema, and we installed a proper power system that cleans the electrical network power and provides all the equipment with the most stable, correct sine waves, and completely disconnecting the entire internal electrical network from the external one, ensuring the best possible clean power here. We achieve this by means of this very powerful 5 kilowatt network filter with an isolating balancing transformer from the company Audis, an Estonian company. And by the way, friends, you have asked me on the channel several times already to talk about how we organize proper power supply in a home cinema, and where better to do this than here, when we have a real working system providing proper power supply. So friends, be sure to subscribe to the channel, click the bell so you don't miss a new video where we will talk about organizing proper power supply in home theaters and cinemas. Moving on to the second rack, it is worth mentioning what is already located here, mainly accompanying and servicing infrastructure equipment and signal sources, As for signal sources, as usual, there is Apple TV for streaming and Zappity Pro 4K HDR for content. That is on flash drives. By the way, the client really likes to bring his large hard drive here and plug it in to watch whatever he desires. However, you can observe an empty shelf here. And this is not without reason. We left space so that the client can at some point bring down from his living room as he plans to finish watching movies there, because now he has this kind of setup. Here's the cinema room where he can bring his favorite Oppo 205 model player, which plays Ultra HD discs. And accordingly, he just needs to plug it in here in a plug and play manner on the control system, which of course runs on RTI. Everything here is already programmed so that you can press one button and the disc playback starts working. Among the supporting equipment here, of course, there's also a network, Ethernet switch and a router that provides internet here and ensures Wi-Fi network and cinema room control from this tablet. An uninterrupted power supply for the projector. Our projector is still lamp-based. This is the JVC DLA N7B model, our favorite mid-range option that we install in almost every cinema room in the mid-price segment, and it always guarantees us an excellent result. It is powered through an uninterruptible power supply from FCI. Moreover, the uninterruptible power supply is a special quiet model with the S prefix to avoid creating unnecessary noise here. And when these doors are closed, neither the projector with its fan nor the UPS with its quiet fan produce any unnecessary noise in the room. And this is very good and proper. I just forgot to mention the lighting control system. Here it is comprehensive, consisting of a Lutron graphic dimmer, which mainly controls the spotlights and light groups. They change throughout the design process of this room, and in the end, there are three main lighting groups. These are the spotlights. Some are paired, some are single, installed in the ceiling box, which also houses the entire ventilation system, and two groups of LED lighting. Well, if you don't count this one. The service lighting that turns on when we open the cabinet doors in the room, we have only three main groups of functional and decorative lighting. This is the baseboard LED RGB lighting. This is the cornice lighting, and it is organized very interestingly. Since we have fabric panels here that are almost flush with the ceiling box, we made the lighting. On the outside, there is another recess, another ceiling level right next to the walls. And in it, the cornice lighting is made, and it is also organized using a LED strip diffuser, and it is RGB. These lighting groups are controlled using Lutron, but the RGB is controlled by a special DMX controller from HDL. All these systems are, of course, connected to the RTI XP6S controller, which is installed right here in the right rack. And all of this works seamlessly, as the Americans say, or just like magic, as Steve Jobs used to say, with a single button press on the customer's iPad. The final stage of creating each cinema room is the calibration of audio and video systems. In this room, it was no exception. And here, to fine-tune the audio and video to adjust. The voltage dropped below 200 volts. That's the kind of electrical network we have at our site, friends. So it's very important to install both UPS and a clean power supply system. And this cinema hall was no exception. I spent at least 3 days here to fine-tune all the nuances, all these details, and to ensure the hall truly has reference level sound, so that you sit down and just get absorbed in what's happening on this big wide screen. We definitely spent 2 days setting up the audio system, catching small glitches in the subwoofer's activation. It has a very interesting automatic activation system, but for some reason there's no trigger. For example, you can't reliably turn on the subwoofers for control and ensure they turn off. Accordingly, when the process shuts down, there's only an automatic system here that unfortunately doesn't always work super reliably. To the Audio Village, if you're watching this video, please take note. And if you still haven't subscribed to our Instagram account, I highly recommend you do so. Go ahead, the links all will be in the description. This is the name of our account. It is there that I personally broadcast live from such sites and show how I calibrate such home theaters, how I set up the trainers, how I set up and calibrate color correction. I do it on GVC. It's very interesting there, I promise. And a few words about money. The cost of equipment and installation and calibration work amounted to approximately $120,000. The budget for the room itself was approximately $60,000. This amount includes the acoustic shell, a set of acoustic panels, and everything you see on your screens, the final finishing. And of course, all turnkey work. Thus, the total cost of the turnkey home theater was about 13 million rubles. Like this video if you enjoyed the Alexandrovka home theater, and be sure to write in the comments which of the solutions I talked about today you remembered or liked the most, and which ones perhaps didn't appeal to you. It will be interesting to find out. Well, if you plan to build a similar home theater for yourself, you know where to turn. Blackroom Company, we build real home theaters that provide a storm of emotions. You will find all the contacts in the description of this video. Well, this was Anton with you, the founder of Blackroom. See you in new videos very soon. Goodbye, everyone.